I got a very beautiful set of fantasy art cards by Greg Hildebrandt, and I'm just gonna showcase this and their antidote in the back.
What a gorgeous lady and unicorn. Angel of the Gods, 1981, heavy metal magazine cover. Creating fantasy art is like stepping through the looking glass. What can be found there is limitless. This time, a highly detailed snake and a pretty lady. Serpent's Glen, heavy metal, 1981. Greg Hildebrandt, born in Detroit, Michigan in 1939. The sunset really suits the black Pegasus and the girl on the beach. Sea Nymph's Flight, 1984. It's romantic imagery, it's obvious, and I love it. Her white hair and the white dragon make a beautiful scene. White Fire, 1987. To achieve proper lighting and form with his fantasy figures, Greg first sculpts clay models like this dragon, from which he then paints. I don't know if they are lovers or if he's going to eat her. Seduction, 1982. The dynamics of this imagery lie primarily in contrasting dark and light elements. Such treatment serves to heighten the tension in a work. This looks like a very morbid scene. The Crucifiers, album cover for Mob Rule's Black Sabbath, 1974. A dream painting. I remember seeing skin stretched across a rack. The Crucifiers have just finished their bloody work. They see me. I'm next. I wonder if that's the puppeteer and the puppet. Puppet Dream, 1971. This imagery represents a time in my life when I needed to paint alone. The images relate to being a twin, which I am. The planet in the room creates a really unique image. Floating Planet, 1971. This image came from the concept that the world in its entirety can easily be confined in a very small space. Really cool combination of a Pegasus and unicorn with yin-yang colors. Rendezvous, 1981. In 1978, Greg and his brother Tim wrote and illustrated the best-selling fantasy novel Ursharok. I don't know why the UFOs are in glasses. Flying Saucers, 1974. Self-portrait, 3 a.m. I was interested in the subjective nature of art with this painting. I expressed this with a question. Are the saucers a reflection in the glasses or a reflection only in my mind? Looks like a death metal band, if you know what I mean. Totentanz, 1983. Totentanz means dance of death in German. Greg has taken this ancient theme and brought it up to date. This is a very eerie castle. Krull, 1982. Greg coupled his skill in fantasy art with his interest in film to produce a series of pre-production paintings for the prehistoric fantasy Krull. This castle has a very different vibe than the last one. Krull 2, 1982. Greg and his brother Tim worked as filmmakers during the 60s, filming documentaries on Third World hunger. Looks like a Native American that's one with nature. Mystic Warrior, 1983. ABC TV miniseries, 1984. In 1978, Greg and his brother Tim won the coveted gold medal awarded by the Society of Illustrators for the best book cover illustration. This looks like the Ride of the Valkyries. Ride of the Valkyries, 1981. Gods and Goddesses. I enjoyed painting the Norse legends, partly because of my ancestry, my German roots. Looks like a Leviathan and possibly Thor with his lightning hammer. Thor, 1981. Greg had his first commissioned work while he was still attending high school. This guy looks very devious and evil looking. Loki, 1981. The strength and evil nature of Loki are magnified by contrasting the subject in a dark foreground against an intensely lighted background. A beautiful lady with a very uncannily placed box. Freya, 1981. Light, its source, and how it interplays with the subject is a primary concern. Wow, a very majestic looking scene. The Gift of the Elf Queen, private painting for Terry and Dale Nybauer, 1991. Greg has painted several fantasy works at the request of private collectors around the world. I think this is the Elf Queen from the last picture. Very beautiful. The Ring of the Elf Queen, 1991. The direction of the light source I have chosen ultimately affects the shape and form of the subject I'm painting. Very scary looking bat on that guy's shoulder. Black Cauldron, private collection, 1983. One of the great pleasures of my art is sharing it with others, letting them step into the world of fantasy as models for the painting. Man, all these girls are naked with horses. I don't mind it. The Winged Messenger, 1982. Fantasy art, especially works with erotic overtones, benefits from contrasting warm and cool light. I just jinxed it. She's wearing a bikini and has a tiger this time. Reflections, 1986. The brothers Hildebrandt created a stunning collection inspired by Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, resulting in 3 calendars and nearly 2 million sales. This guy looks like a scary vampire. Dracula, A View of Horror, 1985. What manner of man is this, or what manner of creature is it in the semblance of man? He must be Dracula, and that looks like his beautiful victim. I hope that's not the case, though. Dracula, Lust of the Undead, 1985. Intrigued by the idea of using minimal color and black, something Greg rarely employs, he chose this approach to capture the full sense of terror and power in the novel. Oh no, I hate it when girls die. Dracula, Miss Lucy's Resting Place, 1985. Actor Frank Langella, who starred in the movie Dracula, wrote an intriguing foreword for this edition. Looks like a group of vampire ladies. Dracula, the Vampiresses, 1985. Dracula has always been a favorite of mine. I love exploring contrasts, light and dark, cool and warm, good and evil, or the fine line between love and lust. Man, this guy is about to witness himself getting gutted. Poe, Pit and the Pendulum, 1986. The terror, the darkness, and the pure genius of Poe's imagination, his words naturally create vivid images in my mind. Illustrating his work was an incredible experience. There's something eerie about this crow and the ghostly lady. Poe, the Raven, 1986. Capturing the essence of a story or poem in a single scene is a challenge. In this piece, I aim to convey the overall mood of Poe's work rather than focusing on a specific action. Oh man, a bunch of souls coming from their graves. Poe, The Premature Burial, 1986. Painting only with Payne's gray and yellow ochre, Greg created a monochromatic image to enhance the general mood of emptiness, longing, and death. Looks like a very evil-looking jester. Poe Hopfrog, 1986. As for myself, I am simply Hopfrog, the jester, and this is my last jest. Poe. Looks like a skeleton holding the sands of time. Poe, A Dream Within a Dream, 1986. Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? The guy with the mask is super creepy. Phantom of the Opera, The Death Choice, 1988. Greg welcomed the opportunity to illustrate this classic because of his love for the great horror films of old. Skulls seem to be a recurring theme here. Unmasks the Phantom, 1988. Designing the sets and imagery for these illustrations involved extensive work. I aim to infuse symbolic detail into the Phantom's surroundings, reflecting somber longings. She looks like she's part of a cult with that robe. Phantom of the Opera, The Secret Passage, 1988. Sarah Brightman, star of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Phantom, wrote the foreword to this edition. Man, that definitely doesn't look like a mask. Phantom of the Opera, The Red Death, 1988. On his cloak was embroidered in gold letters, "Don't touch me. I am Red Death stalking abroad. Phantom of the Opera." My guy looks like a zombie. Phantom of the Opera, Raoul Faces the Phantom, 1988. The character of Eric, burdened with his deformities, fascinated me. Man made a monster of the Phantom. How we treat others is what it's all about. This thing looks like some gremlin-type creature and an angry kitty. Davy and the Goblin, Solomon Stalks the Goblin, 1988. Charles E. Carroll's fairy tale adventure had not been illustrated in over 100 years before this edition. Looks like a wizard with akimbo pistols shooting at a pot of watches. Sham Sham, 1988. Sham Sham cried out, "Don't tell me a watch pot never boils," as he sprang to his feet and began firing at the watches bubbling over. Davy and the Goblin. It's the really creepy gremlin again. Davy and the Goblin, Davy Meets the Goblin, 1988. It's the freedom of imagination that's important, and that's what I'm trying to reach with my art. I think this is Beauty and the Beast, 1984. I tried to achieve a single window into each of these tales. I believe there is a need to escape into romance and fantasy adventure. That's what my art does for me, and I hope for those who see it. A pretty lady and some angry-looking dwarfs. Necklace of the Brislings, 1984. You will not take gold or silver for the necklace. What then is your price? Freya asked the four dwarfs. There's only one price, the third dwarf said, that will satisfy us, and that price is you. The lighting in this picture is very interesting. Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, 1984. I find models in the strangest places. The genie I found at the post office. I needed someone with big hands and long fingers, and lo and behold, from across the counter stretched those hands. Looks like a guy stabbing a dragon in its lair of treasure. Siegfried, 1984. Greg used the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue to capture a primal mood in the painting. A very beautiful red-headed mermaid. The Little Mermaid, 1984. This painting was an inspiration in the creation of Disney's Ariel in The Little Mermaid. A massive bird with a man sitting on its talon. Sinbad, 1984. This illustrates aerial perspective, achieved by painting a dark foreground against a blue background to create the illusion of distance. A heroic scene of a lady being rescued from a sea serpent by a brave figure. Perseus, 1984. I particularly enjoy painting Greek myths because they always involve a triad of elements: the villain, the victim, and the savior. A fantastical scene featuring a character with a notably long beard. The Magic Carpet, 1984. In this illustration, a fairy orders a gold chafing dish set with a fire in the palace. Peri Banu throws incense into the fire, creating a thick cloud of smoke. A captivating portrayal of a humble man drawing a bow. Robin Hood, Where This Arrow Shall Fall, 1989. I was delighted to illustrate this book due to its themes of friendship, devotion, and the fight against injustice embodied by the hero, Robin Hood. I thought they were warriors, but they got walking sticks. Maybe they are travelers. Robin Hood, King Richard Meets the Outlaws, 1989. The king, cried Robin, and he and all his men bent reverently upon their knees as one man. This night looks super cool in this autumn forest. Robin Hood, The Day Dawned, 1989. Greg used his knowledge of artists Howard Pyle and N.C. Wyeth styles in his approach to painting this edition. Looks like Robin Hood. Robin Hood, Best Bowman in All England, 1989. Greg used his son, Greg, as the model for Robin. She's really pretty. What a lovely scene. Robin Hood, He Clasped the Dainty Page, 1989. If you look closely, you'll see Greg used 3 different light sources in this painting: a direct white light, a blue fill light, and a reflected orange light. Looks like a fight scene, maybe saving some people from being hanged. Robin Hood, A Rescue, 1989. The composition of this painting is circular. From the center of the painting, at the sheriff's mouth and moving outward, notice the circular elements of the work. Really weird-looking guy, not his best face art this time. Robin Hood, I Will Soon Get Some Rare Sport, 1989. Down went Robin like a 9-pin, flat down into the dust of the road. Robin Hood. Looks like some secrets being told here, or a love interest. Robin Hood, My Thanks to You, 1989. As with all of Greg's paintings, proper period costume is a must, and he devotes a great deal of time to researching his subject before beginning to paint. Looks like the gang's all here in Robin Hood, Robin and the Men of Sherwood from 1989. Greg Hildebrandt, the artist behind this work, currently resides in New Jersey. What a bright little fairy. This painting, titled Peter Pan, Tinker Bell's Sacrifice, 1987, captures the enchanting essence of Tinker Bell. Second to the right and straight on till morning. This artwork is owned by Michael Jackson, one of many celebrities who have collected Greg's work. This lady looks amazing yet ferocious. In Peter Pan, Tiger Lily Fights the Pirates, 1987, Greg chose to portray Tiger Lily as a powerful and beautiful woman, a departure from the traditional depiction of her as a little girl. This choice sparked some controversy. What do you think? This guy looks like the pirate from Peter Pan, with his hook on his arm. In Peter Pan, The Arch-Enemies Meet, 1987, among the many influences in Greg's art, Walt Disney has been a chief influence in his approach to illustration. Looks like a bubble party with this group of girls. In Peter Pan, The Mermaid's Lagoon, 1987, Greg used his 2 daughters, Laura and Mary, as models. It's Captain Hook's pirate crew. In Peter Pan, The Sinister Captain Hook, 1987, during the filming of Paramount's Hook, Robin Williams purchased finished black and white originals from the book to give as gifts to Julia Roberts, Dustin Hoffman, Bob Hoskins, and Steven Spielberg. What a wonderful setting for Peter Pan and his crew. In Peter Pan, The Magic Shores, 1987, Greg Hildebrandt expresses, in each of us there is a child and an imaginative person. I'm trying to reach that child. These animals look fancily dressed. Alice, Who Stole the Tarts? 1990. I found this an intimidating project. There's so much history behind this book. I mean, everyone's done this book, including Salvador Dali. A floating cat head and some chess pieces yelling at each other. Alice, the Cheshire Cat, 1990. The executioner's argument was that you couldn't cut off a head unless there was a body to cut it off from. I wonder if that mushroom is poisonous. Alice, The Mad Tea Party, 1990. Point of view was a chief concern. The extreme low angle I used accentuates the lunacy of the scene. This caterpillar looks stoned out of his mind. Good influence for this little girl. Advice from a caterpillar. At last, the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. Who are you? Oh man, I don't know if I would drink that, but it does look tempting. Drink me, 1990. Through extreme close-up and backlighting, Greg seeks to visually interpret the magical qualities of Alice's strange brew. This girl looks similar to the Ring Girl, a bit creepy. Wizard of Oz, Dorothy Says Goodbye, 1985. Greg was deeply honored to have actress Margaret Hamilton write the foreword for this edition. She wrote the introduction just before her death in May 1985. I don't remember this scene in The Wizard of Oz. In The Tin Man's Heart, 1985, all I could think about when painting this piece was, Lord, he looks like Ray Charles. Looks like some adult-looking children caused a lady to turn into water. In Dorothy Melts the Wicked Witch, 1985, I have been wicked in my day, but I never thought a little girl would be able to melt me and end my wicked deeds. Look out, here I go. Oh man, these look like some really evil creatures. In The Wicked Witch of the West, 1985, Greg achieved the sinister mood by using ultramarine blue and cadmium red, with his agent serving as the model for the witch. Looks like the Wizard of Oz crew in a field of flowers. In The Deadly Poppy Field, 1985, the high-angle approach creates a leveling effect between the background and the subject, equally emphasizing both the poppy field and the four friends. Her face doesn't really match her body. In The Yellow Brick Road, 1985, Oz is many things, but foremost, it's a journey of discovery that shows we create our own destiny through our choices, not the government, not the leaders, but us. This wizard looks really green. In The Army of Oz, 1985, I aim to capture the absurdity bomb infused in his satire of the military and the establishment, highlighting the notion that not all that glitters is gold. Wizard of Oz, Dorothy Finds the Tin Man, 1985. One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it, with axe lifted, was a man made entirely of tin. Looks like the same light pattern as he did in an earlier work. Pinocchio, the Real Boy, 1986. Greg painted rays of light to symbolize the magical transformation of Pinocchio. Pinocchio, the Green Fisherman, 1986. Greg's genius for creating fantasy characters is evident from such amazing creatures as the Green Fisherman. Dang, his nose grew. Pinocchio Tells a Lie, 1986. The background for this painting incorporates the design motifs of Art Nouveau, an artistic movement from the late 19th century. Oh dang, did he die? I don't remember him dying. Pinocchio the Blue Fairy, 1986. I have found one of the strangest things in my approach to work is painting a crow wearing a dress coat. The fox reminds me of the cat in Shrek. I forget his name. Pinocchio at the Red Crawfish, 1986. I always knew I would illustrate this book. Disney's Pinocchio was the first movie I ever saw. It had an overwhelming impact on me and my career. This puppeteer has a whip and looks like a menace. Pinocchio, Fire Eater the Tyrant, 1986. Greg utilized a low frontal light to emphasize the sinister mood of this scene. Pinocchio running naked in the streets. Pinocchio Runs Away, 1986. Greg often uses himself as a model for the characters he paints. Here, Greg modeled himself as the kindly Geppetto. I thought that scarf looked like a long hand. Scared me a little. A Christmas Carol. God Bless Us Everyone, 1983. The characters in this classic are so well defined that I became very involved with them in my illustrations. This scene reminds me of Christmas Past. A Christmas Carol, Marley's Ghost, 1983. I wonder if Mr. Dickens were alive, would he like these pictures? I wonder that always. It looks like he's seeing his past here. A Christmas Carol, Men of Business, 1983. The story itself, the transformation of a human being, is great. Santa Claus does have a bit of a fat nose here. A Christmas Treasury, Santa's Flight, 1984. This was Greg's first book for Unicorn Publishing. Despite the battlefield setting, the characters do seem quite happy. Treasures of Chanukah, Judah Maccabee Fights, 1987. Research for this book took over a year and a half to ensure every detail regarding Jewish history and culture was accurately depicted. It does look like Hanukkah or something similar. Treasures of Chanukah, the Torah, 1987. Illustrating this book was a real pleasure. It offered me insight into a rich and ancient culture that has fought against what seems like insurmountable odds to preserve their traditions and values.